we have anybody that comes in.
Okay.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to the People Strategy Forum podcast. So we're a show that guides leaders on how to elevate the workforce. And we believe that people are the heart of successful organizations. So team members' well-being, the rewards, career development, that's all essential to a happy and healthy, highly productive workforce overall. So this show discusses the practical and effective leadership strategies for top executives and senior professionals and talent managers. So welcome and happy to have you here today. As I can see that one of our hosts, Smith Singla, just joined in. So hi, Smith. It's wonderful to have you here. I was just saying that Howard is on vacation, so it's he's having a great time over in Italy. So we'll all have our hats off for Howard. But Sumit Singla is a global HR professional. He's worked for a lot of the large organizations such as Accenture and GE and so forth. So we're very happy to have him here. He's a guiding light to help us really see what the differences are across the globe and understanding cultural nuances. And also we have another one of our hosts, Shar Miller, and Shar is broadcasting out of Mexico today. We're lucky to have her. She is a luminary and just different aspects of HR professional and also entrepreneurship. I mean, she's running several of her companies. She's has a history of success there, and so we are happy to have her here. She brings that small business entrepreneurship nature to the forum, and also she's got deep expertise in human resources, and she's worked with large healthcare systems in the past overall. So thank you, Shar, for joining us today. Also, I'd like to introduce our main contributor today. And we're honored to have Holly Woods, and she is a inspiring person in the realm of purpose-driven leadership and transformational change. So Holly's not just a CEO and founder of the Emergence Institute. She's an exceptional coach who taps into the core of what individuals and businesses yearn to become. So with over 35 years of consulting experience, Holly has mastered the art of guiding others through pivotal transformations, nurturing their journey towards a true purpose. And so it makes it perfect for the discussion that we're going to have today. So she's also an acclaimed author, and she shares her insights through the book, The Golden Thread. And as we unpack the intricate tapestry of navigating the future of intention, Holly's expertise promises to be a guiding light to foster a culture of meaningful growth. So let's go ahead and dive into the heart of purpose-driven leadership with Holly Woods. Hi, Holly.
Hey, Sam. Thank you so much. That was such a kind introduction. I appreciate it.
Yes. Well, we're so happy to have you here today. I mean, as tradition, as we start off these conversations, one of the first things that we really want to dive into is just you. I mean, how did you get to where you are today? I mean, what inspired you to be a coach for leaders and to drive them through impactful change?
You know, and probably for many, this is probably the hardest question you'll ask me, mostly because inspire is the word that you spoke that really speaks to me. I was less inspired and forced to walk the path that I've walked, my whole life. Grew up in a fairly difficult childhood. Became very clear that I had to find my way, amidst very difficult circumstances. And so at an early age, probably adolescence, I started really trying to figure out, why is this so hard? And why am I here under these circumstances? I've always been psychic. I didn't know that's what it was when I was a child. I heard voices and like, who are you? And why are you talking to me? And so I learned to listen to these voices, even not knowing what they were, and nobody around me could tell me what I was experiencing. But I realized one of the things I was told as a child was, you're here to do important things. And like, okay, well, tell me what that is. If it's so important, why don't I know it? And so I was on this very determined, committed path to figure out what is that important thing? Like why these circumstances, and why am I here that would matter so much that I need to stay? So in the 30-ish years that I was depressed and somewhat suicidal and wanted to leave, I just kept hearing that voice, can't go. So like, okay, but you got to help me. And so I really committed to learning to listen to the many forms of data that were coming in. I'm a PhD scientist. At one point in my journey, I decided, I need to understand the human dilemma, so my doctorate's in human and organizational development. And in that process, I became aware of, what exists in our material, cognitive, intellectually oriented world. And then there's a whole lot of stuff that can feed me information about who I am and why I'm here that's not in that realm. And so to make this story shorter, I learned to really gather many forms of data to have an awareness of who I am, in the process of also healing those deep childhood wounds, that also turned out to be karmic wounds, if you believe in all that, and liberate who I really am meant to be and become very aligned with what lives in me. So I have access to what it is that is inspired from within. And I've learned to live in a life aligned with that. And so I do help people really become aligned with what wants to be birthed in them, which is an anchoring effect in this very chaotic, tempestuous world we live in. So
it's really interesting hearing about your story. If we think about many successful people and through history, I mean, a lot of times it starts out of a point of or a pain and struggle.
yeah.
And then sometimes they feel like their gifts that they were given, whether if they're if they have a expertise in talking to people or art or whatever that may be. I mean, sometimes they feel like it's a weight upon their shoulders, and then others they feel like it's a gift that they don't know how to utilize.
Right.
And so I think that's a great place to start, because I think a lot of our leaders out there are in situations like going, well, I don't know how I got here.
Right.
It's like, but now I'm responsible for this organization and its purpose and these people and so forth. And so how do you help them understand, where they came from
Yeah.
and the gifts that they were given to be able to lead effectively overall using your experience?
Well, you mentioned my book, and I came upon this very organically. Like I didn't know this was one of the things that I was here to do, is figure out how it is we uncover what the thread or through line of our life is in order to make use of it. And from my own life, and I raised 4 children, to my own 2 stepchildren, which became a petri dish upon which I experimented, and uncovered what is it that drives us to live, fully functional and fulfilling lives. And in this process, as I'm working with clients, I literally saw a golden thread in a client one day and began to piece together all of these elements of like, oh, I'm actually here to help us uncover what we came to do and be in this lifetime. So what is it our souls have been driving us to be and do? And how does that look like, a thread? I'm over here doing this with my hand. It's a thread that lives in us. And so in my work with clients, I actually help them uncover that thread that is the expression of their soul, attempting to fully be enlivened in this lifetime. And it's been trying to do that your whole life, but we don't know it. And it's easier to see in retrospect and hindsight, because there are particular characteristics, I call it facets of purpose, that over and over and over express themselves once we're aware, and we can look back like, oh my gosh, I've been trying to do that my whole life and I didn't know it. And because I wasn't aware of it, I wasn't necessarily taking advantage of that capacity or that gift. So I literally help clients, deconstruct their lives and figure out what it is they've been trying to express, and then become more aware and fully capacitated in that facet. So that becomes a significant guiding light almost. It becomes your North Star or your compass, whatever you want to call it. It becomes like, oh, now I understand this is how I show up in the world. And everything blossoms from there.
No, I mean, today our topic is really navigating change and preparing leaders for that. But into what you were just talking about, I mean, when you're first meeting a new client, a leader, do you kind of look into their or assess their strengths and their potential weaknesses and how their past is interwoven into that? Is that a factor?
Well, um, it's more than strengths and weaknesses. I think that's a simple description. When I'm looking for the facets of your soul purpose, you can imagine it's far beyond strength. It's like it's who I am meant to be in this lifetime. And so I'm going to show up with those inherent capacities that I've been honing, sometimes accidentally through my life experiences. But when we really focus on them and like, okay, here's what you actually, these are the things that you came to do and be, let's work on those so that they can become more pronounced and more honed even further. One of my facets of purpose is I speak powerful truths. I've been doing that since I was a child. I remember, like 2 and 3, I was standing up to adults in my life and saying, no, this isn't going to happen. But I also in my, adolescent, young adult years didn't do that so tactfully and gracefully. And so I created more destruction than it was worth. And so I learned, I became a mediator, a facilitator, and lots of, nonviolent communication. I really studied how it is you speak powerfully that can create an impact that's more desirous. So I've really honed that capacity. And so each of us has those facets. My purpose is to speak powerful truths, to shine love onto shadow, to liberate soul's potential, reunite love and power. So that's not something you're going to find a job description. Purpose is not something that lives within a job or a business or a product. It's something that lives within you. And there are many expressions of it. The back to the question though, the challenges that we experience, I do a lot of work with people on shadow elements, and shadow really means just that which we're not conscious to. So we do a lot of work around limiting beliefs and distractions and parts of, wounding from childhood that limit how you show up in the world so that you can become a better leader and more capable of living more fully in your purpose.
So one of the things that you mentioned a few things I'd like to dig into. One is well, I think that the first one to start with is speaking truth to power. I mean, you mentioned that you have that quite of ability there, and I also find that is also very important in change management or managing change.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that we need to do is we need to be clear, and with whether it's our leadership or with people that entrust in us as employees, to lay the groundwork of what's actually happening and what could happen and so forth. But the problem is in some aspects when as leaders, people rely on us to speak the truth, but they also rely on us to have their best interest in at heart.
Right.
And what I found is that when we are truthful, sometimes with people, that they may find that an extra weight. For instance, we're all going through. I mean, the economy is going through a very difficult time, and a lot of businesses are suffering. But sometimes leaders need to set expectations, saying, okay, well, the company is under stress right now. We're not sure what the future holds. There may be some downsides to that we need to prepare for, and that, of course, is truth telling,
Mhm.
but it also strikes the fear into the hearts of your people. So where's the proper balance there, that for leaders to navigate potentially negative change like that?
And it's a great question, Sam. And so much of what we as, whole and fulfilled humans can do is sense the other. So when I am more complete, more whole, more fulfilled in who I am, I'm living in an alignment with what's true for me, and I'm not resentful and, all the ways that I could be showing up in the world that are not necessarily functional. I am more able to actually experience what's present for others. I can sense their fears, I can sense their concerns or their worries, and I can sense their hopes and desires. And so I can show up in a conversation speaking truth and also tending to the fragility, the care and the concern, the worry, the fear of the other, and attempt to put them at ease that I really care about you and I want what's best for you and for all of us. And I'm going to do my very best to guide us through this tough time, this storm. And in that, I want you to trust me that I'm going to show up and I'm going to be honest and I'm going to be vulnerable. And so that we create this reciprocal dynamic where you don't feel alone because I'm just, showering you with horrible news. So I feel like empathy became, a buzzword during the pandemic, and who has it, who doesn't? And there are many levels of empathy. And deep empathy is when I really truly can feel you and what's going on in you, your thoughts and your feelings. And so I know how to be with you in that, and you can be with me in that, and we can be doing this together. So speaking powerful truth for me is not about, shoving the worst news on you. It's about, I know these things are happening. I'm not sparing you the details, but I'm in it with you. And I want to create a dialogue and a way for us to be together, to work together, to be collaborative, to find solutions that might actually help us shift out of this scenario. So it's care, compassion, deep empathy, active listening, tending to the other and their internal, in their internal world, which means I have to access my internal world. I have to be willing and vulnerable enough to say, yeah, me too. I'm afraid. And I'm in this, and I have the same concerns you do, but you're not alone.
What do you have to say about that, Sumit?
So that's a very interesting model, or a very interesting way to think about it. And in a fairly simplistic way, I came across stuff that seemed to be more on a spectrum, which was either a leader is, they say it like it is, and the other end of the spectrum is being nice, which I thought are both wrong, because says it like it is you could be brutal, you could be uh, stripping away somebody's dignity while you're giving them feedback, and there's no point of recovery for the person.
Right.
Being nice is where you're just trying to be focused more on yourself rather than the other person, and giving them feedback or leading them in a way that they like you, you're not necessarily doing them any good. So the third way that I came across was being kind, where you're actually making a difference to them, giving them more of an outcome oriented piece of feedback, while also helping them retain a sense of who they are and what they do well, and so on and so forth. So would love to hear how that fits in, or if I'm looking at it the wrong way.
I don't know if you're asking me or I certainly have a perspective on that, but I'm not the only one, I'm sure. I mean, I think you're absolutely right that kindness is, me reaching out beyond myself and touching you and tending to your experience in a way that reflects, I see you, I see what's true for you, and how you are with this news, speaking truth, and knowing that I'm going to integrate your truth into my awareness of it. So I'm shaped and shifted by your experience. We're doing this together. It's a dance. And people feel seen, held, touched by leaders who can hold them in that way. And they have more engagement and more commitment. Like if I have a leader, an executive who sees me and knows what I'm experiencing, I'm more willing to show up and say, all right, let's do this, whatever it takes. Let's pull ourselves out of this. And I'm willing to go the extra mile. And I've even seen, company-wide rifts where when the message is delivered in a way that is compassionate and caring and tending to them, they're like, awesome, I want this company to succeed. I'll go away. It can change everything when a person feels held in what their experience is.
I like what you did there, Sumit, and talking about the difference between nice and kind, and nice being more potentially selfish in a way, and more inward facing, where you're kind is you're thinking about others. And I think that's a very powerful perspective. So thank you for bringing that up. Now, the other thing, Holly, I'm sorry, before we get off on that topic, Shar, did you have something you want to add there?
Yeah, I did actually. We brought up the word rifts, and I was accountable for major reductions in force and organizational mergers. And I often sat with the financial or operation leaders and talked about the balance of being forthright about upcoming rifts or reduction in forces, but also realize that we may risk losing staff during that phasing of a reduction of a department. And it was a real struggle to explain that this is extremely people focused.
Yeah.
If we can be as transparent operationally what is happening as possible to support those employees with finding other positions within the organization and being forthright. And so we went through reduction in force that took over a year in process. And it was a constant battle for me to convey that we can't just show up and say, here's your 2-month package. Here's your 2-month package. Go find a job now.
Yeah.
And we did experience some loss during those processes, but I always emphasize with compassion, dignity, and respect always, which is what I always convey, and I still say it today. Employees will appreciate and support the change. And when I started my own companies, that's exactly what I did. And it was a risk. It was a risk because we did lose staff being very forthright with the changes up ahead and through the storms. And later in my career, I started hearing the word VUCA. Well, then it became real to me, right? Volatile and uncertainty and all of the chaos that we experienced. But it seems like today it's even more so than when I was back in a traditional HR position.
Yeah, so in alignment with that, Holly, with what Shar is saying, navigating change and setting expectations. And so we were talking about speaking truth to power. And so the other part of that is how to set expectations with leadership, how to be an advocate for yourself with your superiors in level. So what are your thoughts there? I mean, how can we be a champion for change and manage up and speaking truth to power, having the courage to do so?
It's a big question. It's one of the toughest tasks I experience in supporting executives and companies, founders who have, many employees to care for. Knowing yourself well enough. So this is what I call anchoring in your purpose, so that I know what drives me. I know what is always wanting to come even more alive and be more fulfilled in me. I can show up and say, this is how I'm going to operate best. These are the things that I need in order to show up and be the kind of leader, be the kind of manager of, my own directs that will help me fulfill my obligations as a leader in a company. Most I would say most executives aren't used to having, their subordinates, their directs show up and say, hey, here's what I need. How can we accomplish this? And it would be so useful. I do work with a lot of C-suite and also sort of the next level SVPs and VPs. And I'm continually helping them gain clarity about what matters to them and why the relationship with their superior isn't necessarily working. What's not being fed well enough in you, and how can you also tend to your exec who oversees you and your teams in order to fulfill their purpose, their facets. And so getting to know ourselves and getting to know each other and what really matters helps us each align in how I really do show up in the world. And therefore we can collaborate and coordinate our efforts to take advantage of those strengths. It's like strengths finder extraordinaire. Like if we know ourselves that well, then we can literally advocate for, this is what's going to make me be the best leader, the best executive in this company, or this will help me lead my company, even more powerfully because I'm aligned with what truly matters to me. And I'm not limited by and so I do a lot of belief work. I'm not limited by those old beliefs that kept me stuck in an old way of seeing myself. That was kind of a long-winded answer. It was a very challenging question because it's complex stuff.
Yes, it is. It's very complex. But one of the things that you mentioned, I mean, we're talking about, navigating that change and managing up is one thing. But one thing I just love as part of a topic, and I think is really appropriate to bring up here, is you just mentioned beliefs and diversity. I mean, if we just think about us on this call today, and we have Sumit that's on the other side of the globe, and Shar that's in a wonderful warm place, and then and we are both, Holly and I are in a wonderful cold place right now, Durango, Colorado. So when you're looking at beliefs, we all have different beliefs as well. I mean, there's different religions, perhaps different backgrounds, and so forth. Now, the other thing is that, our employees all have different beliefs. Our customers all have different beliefs, and they come from different backgrounds. So how does a perspective of diversity and different understanding and respecting other people's beliefs help us navigate change and become better leaders?
First off, I want to just acknowledge that the kind of beliefs that I was just referencing and this set of kind of beliefs are kind of two different things, but I'll put that on a sidebar for now. If I as a leader cannot acknowledge who you are and what the basic set of beliefs that construct your way of being in the world, I have no way of actually engaging you as a human to participate in this dialogic, interactive dynamic that you and I are trying to participate in to accomplish our specified tasks. So, this is a sort of a base form of getting to know your people so that you can sense what matters to them. It's a level of matters to them that's more socially constructed based in culture and religion and ideologies of different parts of the world. We really do have to tend to that at a very basic level, or I have no hope of being a good leader for my people, my team. I talked about several sets of beliefs there, and the one I was speaking to earlier is more of an intrinsic belief set that is constructed through our early childhood that identifies how I see myself in the world, even, in lieu of or in despite of all the other cultural, social belief systems that are constructed externally. So I have a set of beliefs about my capabilities and my worth and my value and whether I'm liked and admired and acknowledged. All of those things are as essential for unpacking and resolving so that I can show up fully as a human, you know, leader or participant in something. So that's a big can of worms. And I think, you know, diversity encompasses that too, because you have people who show up feeling really capable and confident and courageous, but they may have some other set of beliefs that limits their ability to really participate fully.
Thank you for that. Now, the other thing that I wanted to touch on as well is relating to how the world has changed over time. I mean, if we just think of you know, I know that we've been talking about pandemic and this point in our lives for quite some time, and it's a bit tiresome, you know. But the mere fact is that it marks a milestone in what's happened to all of us, whether we realize it or not. So let's just take that perspective pre-pandemic. Now, when we were here in the United States, especially, I mean, you would see things from the past 50, maybe 100 years before that, or where we had a perception of careers and what work was meant to be. You know, we would, you know, get our education, go to a university perhaps, or get a higher learning, and then we would apply that in an industry or a company, and we would work our 9 to 5, and you know, we would work our way up the ladder. And then the Great Awakening of the pandemic happened, and now we're seeing a lot of different trends that are going on. And we're seeing that people are thinking, you know, they want more beauty in their life, they want more purpose in their life, and they are and there's a conflict between the old model, where, you know, a lot of companies want to get back to, because they're saying, well, this worked and now we're in a bunch of chaos, and people are somewhat happy and somewhat in distress, and they're not knowing how to fit into the realm. So how can we help our leaders navigate this change when their employees are uncertain about what they want in their future, but they do know they want more, and leaders are being pressed to go back to the old normal of 10 years ago that worked at that time?
I'm not sure who you want to respond to that question, Sam.
You go for it, Holly. You're the
right. I'm sure there's so much wisdom in this group. I would suggest that it never really worked, that we were in denial about a lot of things, including human health and well-being, not to say the least, and that the pandemic, I often think about it as this global fishbowl we were in, where we all got to witness each other, you know, locked inside, looking internally, and we were all having this awakening because there was so much opportunity for introspection. And we witnessed everybody in the world doing this very thing. And we're like, wait a minute, what is this crazy life we're living as humans on this bounteous planet? Why have we been doing this? And so that's part of why we all woke up and said, yeah, no, not going back to that. It didn't work. And our existing linear mechanistic infrastructure built in a paradigm of material world, which is now being disproven, and you know, lots and lots of scholars are suggesting we never really lived in a materials paradigm. It was just a part of a scientific orientation. And as we gained this inner awareness and began to have empathy for others and greater awakening to what really matters internally, we're not about to go back into systems that feed the old belief system. Like, it's not going to happen. And the more we pretend like we can push, you know, the new round peg into a square hole, like we're pretending that it can ever work that way again, and it can't. So I'm sure Shar can tell us a lot about evolving HR systems and what really must happen for leaders to engage their people in ways that address the new belief systems, the new paradigm we're moving into, where this internal awareness is becoming more and more and more important as time goes on. It won't become less. We'll never go back. So can we stop pretending that that's a possibility? That would be my encouragement. Like, first off, like, let's stop pretending and be in denial that we could go back at all, because we can't.
Well, can you hear me?
Mhm.
Hey, you know what? I'm dealing with all this transition around here. I mean, I think that all the background noises were kind of distracting me, but that is an example of all the technology changes on a big, a steamrolling technology adjustment, particularly for us old timers per se. And you're right. I think that our different generations coming into the work system have a different expectation of how we roll with the times.
Yeah.
And, you know, sitting in a huge conference room with 200 or 300 leaders and standing on a podium and boring leaders for 2 to 3 days at a leadership forum is not what our new leaders expect today. I mean, they expect a lot more engagement, listening, as you said, when you started off this conversation today, really listening to the barriers and the challenges in the workforce, and having a talking head standing there either on a video conference or on a podium is not going to inspire or motivate anybody.
Mhm.
And so, you know, we've had to really roll with it. I mean, Sam and I started these forums, how many years ago, Sam? 2020.
Yeah.
And look at all that's happened just when we first started these forums and we started these Zoom platforms, and we used to call it the HR strategy, and now it's people strategy. And we've moved into all different types of directions, learning about AI these days,
Mhm.
which you can speak to the artificial intelligence transformation in the workforce. And look, that has only been a matter of a year, I think, when we had
That's
that, right? I
Wow.
mean,
Mhm.
we did that meeting last May, right?
Yeah, the
When we
conference.
talked about AI. But look
Mhm.
how it's completely taken over our work systems and our processes and communication. Yes, Sumit, actually, I'm going to put you on the spot. What are your thoughts about all these AI, artificial intelligence changes, and how it affects our relationship with our employees and leaders today? What are your thoughts?
That's an interesting question. In fact, I was discussing this with a client earlier today, and we were discussing whether AI is good, bad, or ugly. And um, so the example I was using with them was that of smartphones. And ever since smartphones came up, essentially they've turned all of us into photographers, and you and I can do on Instagram what a professional photographer could have been able to do, say, 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And what has it resulted in? What it's resulted in is that if you and I take 100 pictures, we'll end up with, say, 15 or 20 professional grade pictures, which means that somebody who has been a professional photographer would either have to get less business, or they would have to move up the evolutionary curve and make sure that 80-90% of their pictures are professional grade. And that's how they would continue to get better at their craft and get more opportunities. So I think for the right people, I mean, we live in the age of AI, we live in the age of smartphones. Has painting gone out of style yet? We've got McDonald's and Pizza Hut. Has fine dining gone out of style yet? You'd actually pay more for a nice custom crafted meal than you would pay for fast food. That's my thought about AI. I think it's a great tool, uh, and technology is everywhere. I'm sure it's difficult to resist its advances, but it's a tool. It has to be in the right hands for it to make an impact. And regarding what we were discussing about careers earlier, I think that's where it flows in. That maybe 1 or 2 generations before us, the whole idea was you go to university or you study, you pick up a job, you retire from the job, and that's about it. Then maybe a decade or so ago, people started developing some side hustles, saying just a job is not enough. I'd like to do, I mean, I could be employed as a consultant and have my own, say, jewelry designing business or fast fashion startup kind of a thing on the side. And now we're in the post-pandemic third generation where the average tenures of people are dropping. And that's where demand for things like career architecture comes in, where people want to move across, if possible, within the same organization, have that candid conversation with a leader and see what are the opportunities for me here. I like it here, but I don't want to do the same job over and over again. And that's probably combined with AI that's leading to a fair bit of disruption.
Well, I also noticed that a lot of memes and kind of some kickback recently where it was kind of imitating that the lower wage jobs are taken over by the humans, but the creative positions and the artistry and the writing is now being taken over by AI. So I think I've been noticing more and more coming kind of backlashing about this transition, because taking away our creative positions, including, for example, the strikes that were happening in the acting profession and the writing profession. And so I think there's a major shift going on. What are your thoughts, Sam?
So when we think about AI, I often think of the Wizard of Oz, right? And the wizard behind the curtain. And also in what Smith was just talking about, I mean, is AI good or bad? And I would argue to say that it's a reflection of ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I think that we need to give ourselves credit. And you know, there's something to be said about the journey of creation. And this is what actors do when they're on the stage, or what a musician does in a live performance. I mean, there is the risk of failure. There is the risk of messing up during the process, and people humans love that experience. We love to go see a live game or watch it on TV to see what's going to happen. You know, we don't want to just be given the score at the end. We want to go through the experience.
Yeah.
So I do think AI has its place. But I do believe that we need to give ourselves credit as the creator of designing that process. And then we need to have faith in humanity and that we all love the journey.
I would echo that, Sam. I mean, I've kind of gone the whole gamut with AI, from detesting and resisting to, oh, this is just another phase. Can we just go easy on ourselves, because we're figuring this out like everything else? But the fact that as we become more aware that what matters within, you know, what wants to be birthed is the most pure creative process that exists for us as humans, and that as we all become more engaged with that, we will sort of reject the robotic form of that wanting to come alive within us, and find a way to interact with it so that it supports us, not displaces us. I mean, I really do believe that we're going to reclaim the creativity. I just think most people aren't aware of their innate creativity, and so it's useful to have this workaround until we like, oh no, that really wants to come alive, so let me do that and I'll find another way.
So I just want to bring up something that Andre Bloom, one of our listeners, just brought in. Andre, for everybody to know that doesn't know Andre, is the leader of TMA International, which is a large talent management organization has a global nature. So here's a gentleman that knows what he's talking about, and he just made the comment of saying, I guess it's all about applying our moral intelligence, capturing and securing right ethics.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the one thing that I think that I love about what what it's brought to humanity is it's causing us to really reflect on what is ethical. If we think about the past 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe 100 years, I mean, we've leaned on philosophers of the past of saying what ethics is, and ethics has changed into like the stock market, going up and down depending on what culture you're talking about. But now thrust upon us is AI, where it's a global phenomenon. It's impacting all countries and in different ways. We all have different cultures and so forth, but we have to come together as humans. And AI companies are creating departments that are focusing on what are the appropriate ethical controls that we need to put in place as a global, as a human society, to ensure that we humans have a future on this planet. And so I think that is putting a lot of pressure there, and this has been a good thing for us to think about what is truly ethical and how do we protect ourselves for longevity. What do you think about that, Holly?
Well, it's hard to argue with that position, Sam. And I would suggest that we should also extend ethics to encourage, allow, inspire, engage each of us to be our most potentiated, most fulfilled selves. I mean, sort of, wouldn't that be kind of the ultimate ethics, that I value, appreciate, am committed to you becoming the best you can be so that you can show up fully in your life, both at work and engaged and inspired and contributing, so that your innovation, your creativity emerges through you in order to be your most productive self, and also in the rest of your life. I mean, that's probably stretching the meaning of ethics at this point, but I guess that's like, why else are we here, really? We're not meant to be just cogs in a wheel, for profit's sake. We're here to be inspired and to live fully as our most meaningful self, which means I need you to honor me in that way, and that feels ethical.
Well said. I like that. So I know we're coming up to the end of our time here. I do want to acknowledge, I was just talking about Andre joining the call, and so I do want to talk about his company, TMA. And so it is a wonderful tool, TMA. And if anybody's interested in going through a demo of what this looks like, do let us know. Shar and Sumit are both experts in this platform. And so it's a wonderful way to get to know your people better and have effective conversations with them. So do let us know. We'd love to take you through that platform. In addition, I do want to call out our next week's speaker, and we're going to be talking about leading people through change as well. So we're talking, and I have a difficulty saying her name, but Eureka Simanti. So she's going to be joining us, and I'm looking forward to that conversation very much. But before we get there, I mean, I know that some of you out there may have questions for Holly and so forth, but before we get there, I'd like to just summarize overall and what we've been talking about today. So the key piece here is navigating change and how can leaders do that effectively. And so, Holly, a question for you in that aspect. What do we want our listeners to be walking away with right now from this conversation? What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, there's a few essential elements that I envision as important for helping us navigate through the next, phase of humanity, however long we're able to keep it going here on the planet. And one of them really is anchoring in purpose. So as I know who I am with more clarity and I'm more grounded in and anchored in that awareness, I am able to show up more fully in any set of circumstances, whether it be a calm and productive and, upward trending company that I just show up and do my work and everything's fine, or this very chaotic sea that many of us are finding ourselves in. When I know what my capacities are, I can show up and be of service in a much greater way. And so that's one of the essential elements. The second would be learning to listen newly. There's a great book, Ian McGilchrist is one of my favorite authors, and he's been studying sort of paradigm shifts over centuries. And this awareness that we pay attention to with our sensory apparatus, certain things in our environment, because we've believed we've been living in this material concrete world. And when we learn to expand our capacity to listen to the subtle, to things that we can't see or touch, then we can gain twice as much information about what's truly going on in our environment. So paying attention to what's inside of me or what's inside of you, and the other subtle indicators. So what I'm really advocating for is a deeper listening, even beyond what you'd call active listening. It's a deeper listening to the signs and symptoms of what's in our environment, so I can respond right here, right now, not wait till tomorrow I go home and put it on a spreadsheet and, you know, figure out what my best next step is. I know in this moment, this is the next step. You might call it intuition, you might call it gut sense, but I'm gaining an awareness of what's right here in the present so that I can respond more nimbly with agility and focus and feel directed that this is the right orientation. I also believe that we need to become these creators that we spoke about, that when I listen to what's really wanting to emerge from me, that is me co-creating with this broader, you know, morphogenic field, you might want to call it, quantum universe. Like I'm calling all of that data in and listening to what wants to emerge, which is going to be always a phenomenal contribution. So those are 3 elements that feel very important in my awareness about how we navigate the future. We're going to need to become different actors in our own lives.
That's very powerful. Thank you so much, Holly. So for our listeners out there that said, you know, that sounds incredible. How do I learn more about that? How do they get a hold of you, Holly?
Well, my business is Emergence Institute, and you can find me at Emergence Institute. Just Google it. I'm also going to put a link in the chat. You can schedule a 30-minute conversation with me. It's on my Calendly, Hollywoods-Discovery-Consult. You can buy the book. This is 4 years old now, but it's still very pertinent to the work I do. Golden Thread: Where to Find Purpose in the Stages of Your Life. And I do an individual consulting, coaching, and I'm also hosting a new initiative in the new year called Boldacity that I'm going to work with visionaries and innovators who are wanting to bring, you know, birth this new innovation into the world in these challenging times.
That sounds great. So if you're a bold innovator, you need to be reaching out to Holly right now for sure to get on board. All right. Well, it's as I've enjoyed the conversation. It's just been wonderful. Thank you so much, Holly.
You're welcome. Thank you. Great conversation. So much fun.
Yes. All right. Well, take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week on the People Strategy Forum.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. This was so fun. So enjoyed it. What great conversation.